Hi, welcome to Saunders Sisterhood. I'm Carrie, and this is a YouTube channel for the single and childless, not by choice person. Today, my video is going to be about my experience freezing my eggs. I decided that I wanted to share this experience with you because I think it's something that a lot of people as they start to age, or a lot of women as they start to age, start to think about, wonder about. And if you're in my age group, it really wasn't something that was talked about in my 20s. This was something that I heard more about in my 30s. It just started to become a thing. So I wanted to share a little bit about my experience in case you're considering this. So first off, I thought a lot about this before I did it. I think I thought about it for years, kind of always thinking I had some time. And then around 38 or 39, I started to definitely feel like a huge time crunch on having kids, let alone being able to freeze my eggs in a way that could be successful. So I started to research it a little bit more. I started to ask around a little bit more. I thought a lot about this. I tend to run a little anxious, so all the kind of what ifs, whether I did it or not, started to run through my head. One of the biggest things that I was worried about, quite frankly, was the cost. It's very expensive to do. I had a Kaiser health plan, so 0% was covered. Everything I was going to be paying for out of pocket. The thought of dropping $20,000 on something I may or may not end up using that may or may not work was difficult. In the end, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and do it. It helped that I knew somebody who had done it as well. So I had somebody who I could ask questions about and who could kind of show me the ropes or tell me what to expect. The other element that I thought a lot about is, if I end up freezing my eggs, am I admitting that this is something that isn't going to happen, right? And I think confronting that when I was coping by just telling myself the universe wasn't going to do me that way, or that I had hope around it, that was difficult as well. So that like mental shift of, listen, you are hitting an age where this is becoming a do or die situation around it. And so that really, I think, pushed me over the edge. I was already fairly old to be doing this, so I thought I need to do it now. The other element around it, there's so many things to consider, and also like essentially like time and biology kind of make it so there is a hard deadline on it, right? One of the things that I think I was really lucky about is that I lived in an area where one of the most kind of well-known clinics is based. Celebrities go to this clinic, people travel far to go to this clinic. And so I knew that where I was going to be top notch. It was going to be really responsible people who have been doing this for a long time. And that made me feel a little bit more comforted around it. The idea that I wouldn't have to travel a long distance. In fact, part of the egg freezing experience is you have a lot of frequent appointments, and unless you have a job that is really considerate around that, it can be intrusive around it. I happen to work literally right next door to where my doctor for this office was, and so that just made things a lot easier. And I had a really supportive boss. My boss was a woman, and I think really wanted to support me in doing what I felt was best for me at the time, and was really compassionate and empathetic around it. So going back to the expense, it is expensive. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Oddly enough, kind of the most expensive thing that I remember was the medication. A single shot was, thousands of dollars. This was something I didn't expect, but they gave me a list of pharmacies because it's specialty pharmacies that carry these meds. They gave me a list where I would call, like I was calling pharmacies in Chicago and New Jersey and California and trying to like shop the best price. Was lucky enough to live in more of a metro area that happened to have a specialty pharmacy near me, and so I was able to go pick those up. Other thing was the other meds that I ended up having shipped to me. I remember having to have them shipped to me at work because they had to be refrigerated within a certain period of time. So there's just some logistics to really consider as you're thinking about this experience. These aren't like huge barriers, but it's definitely kind of disruptive to your life when you're in the thick of it. But anyway, back to the expense. I believe I paid around $20,000. Again, 0% was covered by insurance. I had Kaiser, so even the fact that I had, you know, just like certain blood tests that I needed drawn, the fact that they were ordered by a non-Kaiser doctor meant that I even had to pay for those. So that might be something that's different for you if you're experiencing this. You know, the idea of dropping that kind of money for something that I may or may not use was difficult. I definitely spent a lot of time processing that. Ultimately, I landed on the fact what was going to be my biggest regret. And I didn't want to have regrets upon regrets, right? It was almost an insurance policy that I used because I felt like I could live with kind of wasting $20,000 more than I could regret living with all of the what ifs that would circulate in my head. I was already going to be living with a lot of those. And the idea of adding this one just felt more than what I could handle. I fully recognize not everybody can just, you know, drop $20,000 on something like this. I did end up financing part of it. Again, as you know, I'm doing a YouTube channel for a single and childless, not by choice person, so I didn't end up using the eggs, right? But I still don't regret doing it. So the other thing to consider, I talked a little bit about the fact that you have to have a pharmacy and there's some work involved in price shopping the medication. It's also the time and the shots. I was really worried about the shots. I had never had to do something like that before, so I was concerned. I was concerned how that would impact me. I was concerned that I would start this process, but I wouldn't be able to, you know, give myself the shots. I was concerned about the kind of mental aspect of like pumping myself up full of hormones, living alone, having to go to work and just flying off the handle, things like that. And it was difficult. It also kind of stops your life for a little bit, right? Like you are having to, you know, eat really well, and abstain from alcohol, and, you know, take it easy, not get your, this is what I remember, not get your heart rate up too high, right? So it definitely a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. Now, it's not for a long period of time. It's not hugely strenuous. And if you run anxious, you know, it's just a change in your routine, right? And again, the shots. Also, it's unpredictable in terms of when you'll have the egg retrieval surgery, or I don't know if it's a surgery per se, but it's a procedure using or anesthesia, so you go under and you have to kind of go and they give you some ultrasounds, if I remember correctly, where they look to see how the eggs are growing and progressing. Then they identify when they want to give you the trigger shot, then I think just gives a burst, and then they want to retrieve the eggs within a certain period of time after that. And you don't know when you're gonna be prescribed the trigger shot, right? So they do that. It's really customized based on how you're progressing and what you're doing. So during the time that you're doing this, having a really flexible schedule is important. I do remember being told that I would know within a few days likely of it, because I remember my mom came out because I had to have somebody with me for 24 hours after the retrieval because you were under anesthesia. P.S. I think my mom was like in her late 70s at the time, and like even explaining that I was going to freeze my eggs was a little comical. She was really supportive, but again, I'm 45, and at the time this was something that was pretty new. To explain that to my mom was interesting, to say the least. So I ended up freezing my eggs, right? I went through with it. I bit the bullet. I did all of those things. And it doesn't look like I'll ever use them. I'm 45 currently. There's nothing in the future to indicate that I'm going to find somebody in time. The way I'm remembering the clinic that I was at, that you have until 46 to use them. Otherwise, they don't recommend going through the process. I don't even know if I want to go through the process this time. You know, I think for me, I understand it might be different for other people. Like having a child right now just feels really overwhelming and scary, and I've kind of gotten to a place of acceptance, and so I'm almost positive I am not going to be using the eggs. And I wouldn't even be able to carry my own child anyway, because I ended up having to have a hysterectomy unexpectedly, which was super shocking, and a whole other video. So I don't even have like the vehicle to end up carrying a child of my own anyway. So it's probably not going to happen. I will say I don't regret doing it. I don't regret giving myself every opportunity that was within my control. I think I would have had a much bigger regret had I not done it. Do I sometimes think what I could have done with the money? Yes. Would have been a nice down payment on a rental property or something, but that just wasn't where I was at the time. That was my experience in terms of freezing my eggs. And it doesn't end with everything turning out great and you get, you know, a wonderful baby at the end. That just wasn't it for me. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm not a medical professional, but this is just my experience, and it's also my recollection of what occurred 5 to 6 years later. So keep that in mind as well. So follow us under Sisterhood for more videos about the single and childless, not by choice person.